great to see you and good to be with you. Will you grab the bulletin you received when you came into the chapel this afternoon? And let me just kind of navigate our way through this. If you happen to be with us for the very first time, we have provided you this guest registry card. We'd ask you to complete it and drop it in one of the boxes as you leave. Also, there will be guys or gals at the door who will have little envelopes, and inside of those envelopes there's a package of information that will tell you all about East Valley Bible Church. So if you are new to the church, you can get a jump start on understanding all of this between that packet and the website. And then the third thing, and it's in the bulletin, the Connect One class. It's a class that is a one Sunday class, and it happens to be next Sunday. So if you're new to the church, you are God's timing is good for you. You need only to register for that class. Let us know how many adults will be there so that we can buy lunch and make sure we have lunch. Part of that is there'll be meeting time, then I'll come in, we'll have an hour of Q&A, and I'll try to answer any question that you have the best that I can. And we need you to register how many adults will be there. And then also children, we'll provide child care for you. There's an expense to us for all of this, so let us know so that we don't plan for you and then your plans change and you forget to tell us. So please take advantage of that. The other announcement I'd offer to you is from the Institute. Registration today out in the courtyard. I don't know if you can register online. My assumption is you can. But you can register online or register out in the courtyard. For the second session of the summer classes. You'll see the list there, and if you're going to be around, I was talking to a couple of teachers this morning, and they are back in school tomorrow, and the kids get there a week from now, so it's not like the old days. So you may have your summer vacation behind you, you're here, and this is a great time for you to learn, and boy, what a great opportunity, the Institute classes, so take advantage of that. If you were with us on either Friday night or Saturday, we had a wonderful time over in the conference center. We sold out. We had 50 tables in there. It was jammed. We could not have put another table in there. 50 tables in there, and sold them out for both nights. And if you were there, we thank you, and hopefully you had fun. If you missed it, that's okay. There's 2 more events in kind of this year-long celebration. The next event is the end of September. You can mark these 2 dates on your calendar. September 30th. As we'll undertake a project here in the town. We're working on finalizing that now. And then on the first Sunday in November, and I'm excited. We haven't done this in years and years and years. We're going to have everybody in one place at the same time. So we're going to be out at Sneff Farms for the whole day. We'll do Sunday worship out there. Our church time will be out there. Picnics, stuff going all day long. So make sure you block out those 2 days, September 30th and then the first Sunday in November for our 15th kind of anniversary celebration. So we look forward to that. I feel like I have not been with you in a long time. It's been kind of weird the last even group of weeks. I was gone for summer camp, and then I got sick. I'm always bragging I never get sick, and then I got sick and missed a Sunday. The last 2 Sundays I've been out of town. I think most of you know that my father died. And so I want to talk to you about that today. It's one of those moments. I can tell you where we're going to be the next 2 Sundays in terms of study. Next week, we'll look at James chapter 2, verses 14 to 26. And then the following week, we'll look at James chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. So those will be the next 2 Sundays. But I want to take this Sunday and talk about him a little bit. I was thinking in terms of the 15th annual anniversary celebration. Of all of my life that I've lived with you. You know, when we first started the church, Sarah, I think, was 10, and Haley was 8, and so there's been lots of stuff that we've shared together. And the nature of this is, as I go through stuff, you get to be pulled or drugged or led through it as well. And so we've watched the girls grow up together, and we've had high school graduations and nursing school graduations and nuclear medicine tech graduations. And we've had weddings, 2 of them, and we've had the birth of a grandson, and now the pregnancy. We've had all sorts of those kind of celebratory moments. We've also had the other side of that. There was the Friday that Sarah had her car accident, and I taught that Sunday, and some people were kind of surprised by that. But to me, that's part of that pastoral moment. So I think it was important, hopefully beneficial to you. Throughout Susan's cancer, I've tried to be candid with you, and I reflect on it periodically. I'm as open as I'm going to comfortably be, and hopefully that's enough, and hopefully it means something to you. And the same thing is true of what we went through the last the last week or so with my dad. So I want to just take this moment and just talk to you. And part of that is not to focus on me, and I hope you're comfortable with that. But part of this, and the important part, is to help you process all of this stuff. Because what happened and what I experienced, you all presumably have a mother and a dad. I can't believe any of you just were hatched. There's a couple of you maybe, but generally speaking, I don't think you were hatched. There's a mom and a dad, and they will experience what my dad did. So hopefully this will be helpful to you. My dad actually died July 2nd. That was a Sunday morning. I got a call on that Saturday night, and my brother had said that he had had a heart attack. My dad had had a heart attack, and he kind of just took me through in terms of we're at the house, and it's been about 45 minutes. There's a pulse, but he doesn't seem to be responding, and we're on the way to the hospital. And so I got that call, and that's one of those calls that I don't know about you, but I tend to fantasize about those things. I tend to think, how will I respond to that? How will those things work? And so I was, in my mind, I'd thought through those things before, and the nature of what he said led me to believe it was really serious, so I thought I need to get there as quickly as I can, and tried to make an airline reservation with a human, and seemed to get tapped into Calcutta every time I made a phone call, and I had a problem there. So I finally just did it online. I got a one-way ticket, not knowing how long I'd be there. I kind of thought that it was really serious, and yet I thought maybe it'll be a couple weeks even that I'm there for stuff. And then I got a call the next morning before I could even get out of town. Bags were packed, but I couldn't get out of town, that he had not made it through the night. I learned a little bit about it when I got home, what happened. He had had a really normal couple of days. On Friday, he had, along with my mom and a bunch of friends, took a bus up to Wrigley Field to see the Cubs play the White Sox. And that Saturday morning, he had been to 3 Little League games, which is a lot. Those two things combined could do in a good man, I think. So my point is, it was a very normal day for him. His Saturday routine is to watch Lawrence Welk and then go upstairs, take his shower, and get ready for bed. He had watched Lawrence Welk. He went upstairs and slumped over, and my mom heard a thud and didn't get a lot of response and called a neighbor. What makes me laugh is the last show he saw was Lawrence Welk. When my brother called me, I was watching Lawrence Welk. That's kind of funny. What's really funny is some of you are going, who is Lawrence Welk? Which makes me laugh too, and it's your loss that you don't know. But I watch Lawrence Welk. I try to watch the beginning of it every Saturday night at 7, and I try to see the end. I don't always get both of those done, and part of that is I can remember as a little boy being at my grandpa's house listening to Lawrence Welk on the radio, and then when he was on television, and I know my dad is watching that every week, and there's some sort of weird connection there. So I thought I would anyway take the time to just talk to you about this. When I got back, they were beginning to make arrangements. What we typically do here, and of course you're out of your element, but typically here, if someone dies, we'll meet with the family, and almost always what's involved is a graveside service, and usually something here at the church. Back home, a big part of this is the night before a visitation. We don't do a ton of that out here, it seems to me. I guess some do, but we don't. And that's even bigger than the funeral. So it was a wonderful time. The kids came back. I went back on Sunday. Susan came in on Monday. Tyler, Haley, Timmy, Sarah, and Braden all came in on Tuesday. So it's really cool to have everybody there. And it was a big deal. They said somewhere between 500 to 600 people were at this visitation. And it was pretty interesting. A lot of old people. My dad was 82, and so a lot of his contemporaries that are still alive were there. I find myself, you know how you're in those moments and your mind is drifting between the seriousness of the moment and your mind is also making interesting observations. And one of my observations was, if I was the guy who was the funeral home director and I saw this, I would go home and order a new car because they're just lined up, and I'd be passing out my cards. There were a lot of prospects at this event, it seemed to me. And shrinking. They were shrinking. I don't often feel tall, but I felt tall in that room. It was a weird, so we had all of those things going on. If you were in line to see my mother, you would stand, depending upon the time of the day, night that you got there, you'd stand an hour in that line. It took about 4 hours for us to get through it. It was a great time. And so I thought what I'd do today is talk a little bit about him, and then more importantly, just some lessons from this. So bear with me. Even if this is awful for you, you only have 35 more minutes to endure. My dad was born June 13th, 1924. As I said, that makes him 82 years old. He was born, and he would want you to know this. This is important to him, in Melrose, Iowa. Melrose is a town of 400, dropped down to about 200, and has had a little bit of a resurgence. They built a dam, and there's a big lake there, so a lot of recreational stuff going on now. Melrose is called Iowa's Little Ireland. It's a little pocket of kind of Irish people who hung out there. So McGraths and McKinleys and all those names are pretty popular back there. And if you talk to them about their heritage, the one thing they can talk about is in 1937, and we're struggling here now. In 1937, they won the state basketball tournament. Now, that doesn't sound like a big thing, but in that day, there were no classifications. So there wasn't A, B, C, or A, AA, AAA, or 1, 2, 3. There was the whole state. So if you had 2,000 kids or you had 150 kids, you all played in the same tournament. And they won that. To this day, they'll still talk about it. I did a memorial service at Sun Lakes not long ago, and a guy got up. It just blew me away and said, talking about Iowa, he said, 1937, Melrose Shamrocks. And I thought, my gosh, I'll never get away from this. But they were 36-0, and they were proud of it, still are. My dad was one of 6 kids. His father worked on the railroad. They had a little house. We used to visit them. That was a really small little house, 2 bedrooms. My grandma and grandpa were downstairs. All 6 boys and girls were upstairs in one room. So imagine that as you're developing and you're growing and you're a teenage girl and boys and all the awkwardness of it as there is. But one good thing, you didn't have to share a bathroom because that was down the road a bit. So you would go down for that. What happened when I went back is I stayed with my mom, and her sister was there, and then Susan and I stayed with them. So every night, we would kind of end up back at the house for that last half hour, or 45 minutes, or hour, or whatever it was of the day. And toward the beginning of that week, it might have been on Monday night before Susan got there, we were sitting around. And what I've discovered is kind of helpful in those instances is to pull out a map, especially these little towns, because Melrose is here. There's 400 people there. But Lucas County, the county seat, is Sheraton, Iowa, which is about 4,000. And I got the map out, and we started talking about all these different towns. And if you just took a map and kind of drew a little circle around Sheraton, you'd probably hit 40 towns, burgs, villages. And I'd mention a town, and then they'd talk about this town, what they were known for. That's where the Polish kids were. That's where the miners were. That's where the Germans were. And they talked about their life. They talked to my mom and her sister about growing up and about what we had and didn't have. And my aunt talked about, as a little girl, wanting on a Christmas a Mickey Mouse watch. That was the deal. And she let her parents know really all year that what she wanted for Christmas was a Mickey Mouse watch. And then when Christmas came, there was simply not enough money to get a Mickey Mouse watch. And I've discovered we can't even relate to that. We're only 2 generations really away from that. And we are hard-pressed, I always find, at Christmas to buy gifts, simply because if we want something, we get it. To watch them go without was interesting to me. There were 2 things that they talked about that just kind of make me go like this. They only bathed once a week, and then they all bathed in the same water. And interestingly enough, we have all these wipes and gels and everything, and we're sick all the time, and they never got sick, which makes no sense to me either. The other thing, and I thought about how to share this, and my point here is just to have you get just a small sense of what their life was like. They had some distant relatives that kind of hit it big. They ended up in Washington, D.C. And my mom was saying when they would come to visit, so do you get the scene? You have people coming you want to impress, and so you put out certain china or certain flatware, or you really clean the house. Now, I don't mean this to be anything but just give you a perspective. They said when these cousins came to visit, we would buy a roll of toilet paper. Because other than that, it was, and I don't mean to be, I just want you to, there was Sears catalogs and there was Montgomery Wards, and that was it. And then my mom said, and we were rich compared to the Shraders. So that's my dad's background. That's what he was all about. And I think when you hear that, you get a sense of a glimpse of what he's like. It maybe helped us understand a little bit of how he thought. In Tom Brokaw's book, The Greatest Generation, he really captures this, and in one sense, I think it's helpful. I really don't see my dad as anything unique. He probably, just physically, financially, they probably had less than a lot, but not terribly unusual. Brokaw talks about walking down the beaches with the troops that landed on D-Day. And he writes this: as I walked the beaches with the veterans who'd landed there and now returned for this anniversary, men in their 60s and 70s, and I listened to their stories in the inns and the cafes, I was deeply moved and profoundly grateful for all they had done. I realized that they had been around me as I was growing up and that I had failed to appreciate what they'd been through, what they'd accomplished. These men and women came of age in the Great Depression and when economic despair hovered over the land like a plague. They had watched their parents lose their businesses, their farms, their jobs, and their hopes. They had learned to accept the future that played out one day at a time. Then, just as there was a glimmer of economic recovery, war exploded across Europe and Asia. When Pearl Harbor made it irrefutably clear that America was not a fortress, this generation was summoned to the parade ground and told to train for war. They left their ranches, their jobs on Main Street. They gave up their place in the assembly line. They quit school or went from cap and gown directly into uniform. They answered the call to help save the world from the two most powerful and ruthless military machines ever assembled, instruments of conquest in the hands of fascist dictators. They faced great odds and a late start, but they did not protest. At a time in their lives when their days and nights should have been filled with innocent adventure, love, and the lessons of a workaday world, they were fighting, often hand to hand, in the most primitive conditions possible. That was that generation, and I think we tend to take that for granted. My dad went into the service on April 21st, 1943, and was released on March 29th, 1946. April 10th, 1945, he was shot and received for that a Purple Heart. I say all of that because I think about, here's this kid in this experience who'd never really been away from Melrose, and certainly not out of Iowa. Maybe to Davenport a bit, or maybe to Des Moines for a state fair. And he was petrified of water. I mean, we, on a couple of occasions, we were up at Sea Ranch, and you know how we go up there, and he was, you'd see him stay away from the bluff. Even walking by the Dell over at Coronado, you would watch him stay away from, he did not like that. And here's the ultimate evidence of that. A few years ago, I invited my mom and dad to go with us on an Alaskan cruise. And I knew they'd say no, but I had the ultimate, what I thought was the ultimate enticement. I said, I'll pay for it. And my dad said no. Now that right there tells you how afraid he was of the water. And yet he came home from that, and then he was kind of like everybody else. I guess I see my family in the midst of Brokaw's words here. Let me indulge me here with two more paragraphs. When the United States entered World War II, the U.S. government turned to ordinary Americans, guys like my dad, and asked them extraordinary sacrifice, service, and heroics. Many Americans met those high expectations and then returned home to lead ordinary lives. When the war ended, more than 12 million men and women put their uniforms aside and returned to civilian life. I want you to just get a sense of that. This is now 1945-ish. It's 50 plus 60 years ago. The country was smaller than it is now. Did you hear the number? 12 million. And I'm not in any way demeaning it, but when we talk about 125,000 or 150,000 troops in Iraq, that is a fraction of what was engaged in World War II. Statistics vary, but the latest statistics that I've heard is somewhere between 750 and 1,000 World War II veterans die every day. That just gives you a sense of how many of these there were. When the war ended, more than 12 million men and women put their uniform aside and returned to civilian life. They went back to work at their old jobs or started small businesses. They became big city cops and firemen. They finished their degrees or enrolled in college for the first time. They became school teachers, insurance salesmen, craftsmen, and local politicians. They weren't widely known outside their families or their communities. For many, the war years were enough adventure to last a lifetime. They were proud of what they'd accomplished, but rarely discussed their experiences with each other. They became, once again, ordinary people, the kind of men and women who always have been the foundation of the American way. And that was kind of him. Dates here become important. He came back and went to school. He went to college. And I don't mean this. I'm watching contrasts in generations and wondering what it means. And I'll run into so many kids who are going to college and they're going full time, and that's so demanding, and I can't work. And well, he went to college full time and worked at Oscar Mayer full time. He killed pigs. What he did was kill pigs before they slaughtered them. And then he had, on top of that, a part-time job. So I want you to get that. Full-time school, full-time job, part-time job in a mortuary, driving around picking up bodies because they'd let him sleep there so he didn't have to spend money on a room. These dates become kind of cool, I think. Let me take you through that. He went home for a dance. And my mom, the way she tells the story is the Melrose boys were boys that could dance. The boys from Melrose could dance. That is, everyone except one of them. And that would be the DNA that was passed down to me. That's my dad. My dad started dating my mom. Now listen to these days and you will get yet another insight into the man. On June 6th, it was a Sunday, June 6th, 1948, he graduated from college. June 7th, 1948, a Monday, he married my mom. June 14th, 1948, a Monday, he started at Davenport Bank. So he went from college to marriage, off to Colorado Springs. That was their honeymoon. Took the train out, celebrated, came back. My aunt was saying, the only thing I remember about the honeymoon is I got a postcard from your mom saying, wish you were here. So I don't know what that means, but it can't be good. And went to work at the bank. Now, I want you to get a sense of the man and of stability and reliability. Right? He went to work at the bank on June 14th, 1948, retired from the bank in 1990. That's 42 years. Married my mom on June 7th, 1948, and obviously was still married when he died. That's 58 years. So that's kind of how he is, kind of a routine guy. There is in town a big auto dealership. I've tried to figure out how to explain that, but it's 6 or 7 dealerships combined. It's kind of like a Chapman, and all combined in one place with all these different things. This guy sells Chevys and Lexus and Volkswagen, all this stuff. And the guy who's the son of the owner of that was there at the visitation, and he said to me, your dad was a celebrity at our place. By that, it meant that everywhere he went, it was an event for him. He only had the oil changed on the car at the dealership. Why would you? So when he went, my mom was kind of thrilled because it would take a whole morning for him. He would go, and he would have to make the rounds and check with everyone. Many of the guys talked about how he was a mentor, how he was part of the group that hired him, and how he really stayed with them and never let them go. I want to just give you some lessons of this. First of all, the most frequently asked question I've been is, how's your mother? Well, let me give you one illustration. The answer is, I think she's doing well. I tried to call her this morning and the line was busy. So I'm not going to I may call her between services, but I don't know if I'm going to talk to her today. We were walking out and making the funeral arrangements, and I was walking along with her, and she kind of stopped and was looking around and said, what's the deal? And she said, I was looking for your dad. And that probably happened 3 or 4 times while we were back there, just inevitably her going, where's your dad? 58 years, rarely apart, and since 1990 when he retired, they're virtually together every day. She's doing okay. My dad handled all the finance. My mom is a little bit like me. If something happened to Susan, I'd be in pretty serious trouble in that I have no clue where the checkbook is or any of those things, so it'd probably be wise for me to figure that out. So my mom has that, but she has two of my brothers are there. On the day that I left, I took my mom to show her how to put gas in the car. She'd never done this. It was kind of a cool moment. We pulled up, and I said, all right, I want you to think this through with me. What should we do first? And she said, well, we should find out where you put in the gas. Where's the gas cap? I said, great. So she went back, and there it was, and she started poking. She said, I can't get it open. And I said, okay, there's a button up in the car. We got to go get the button. So we went and got the button. I said, now we got to deal with this. Give me your credit card, and we'll get it started. And she said, well, I'm going to pay cash. And I said, well, then I'm in real trouble because I don't know how to pay cash for this. I've never done that. You're going to have to take it from here. I'm a little bit lost. And I said, I don't even know if they take cash at this place. And so we figured we paid after we pumped, and we put the gas in. And she said, can I just squeeze it? Will it shut off? And it was really a sweet moment. There was something then happened. Then we went in, and she was so proud of that. She started to tell the gas attendant, this was her first time getting gas, and this person just blew her off. And I thought, what a jerk. And then I caught myself and wondered, I wonder how many times I've done the equivalent of that. I wonder how many times I've had somebody who was sharing something with me, and I didn't get it. So here's some lessons. Number one, my dad taught me the beauty of a simple life. He was not a simpleton, but he was a simple man. He didn't need a lot of complicated stuff. He could sit in our backyard and be mystified that the airplanes would stay in the air. You know, he would sit at the place, they had a place across from Fashion Square that he stayed, and he would sit in the porch and he'd watch the airplanes. He and I were taking a ride one day years ago, and we were out on this end of town, not much further now from where we were, and there were a bunch of orange groves around then. I think we were coming over Baseline, and we stopped at a stoplight, and I looked over at him, and you could just see he was all teared up and emotional. And I said, what's the problem? And he said, when I was a little boy growing up, I knew oranges grew on trees. I just never thought I'd see one. That's kind of how he thought. I was watching the news one day, and the Powerball was at $80 million. I said, what would you do if you won the Powerball? And he said, I would never buy a ticket. And I said, well, if I gave you a ticket and you won the Powerball, what would you do? And he said, I wouldn't change one thing in my life. If you listen to me teach over a period of time among some doctrinal truths, practically what I'll talk about is contentment. And he kind of embodied that. We learned that. He also taught me that people matter. I'm going to give you two examples, and there were dozens, literally. The first one was his cardiologist. He was a man from India, and his wife was an Indian. His wife was an internist. He was a cardiologist. I don't associate cardiologists with emotion, though I do associate them with the heart. This man, and I knew it had to be him when I saw him at the visitation, this man finally kind of sought me out and began to cry. And he said, there is no way I could have what I have today if it wasn't for your dad. I learned something that night. I didn't fully understand it before then. He really didn't give a rip about banking, though he did it for 42 years. That was his vehicle to help people. And that's what this guy was saying. He said, I came to town, I didn't know anybody, I had no collateral, I had a degree, I had nothing else. And there were a lot of people who wouldn't talk to me, and your dad talked to me, and your dad worked this through, and your dad gave me this loan, and your dad set me up, and I am what I am and have what I have because of your dad. Toward the end of the visitation, I was off. It was a decent, good-sized room, and I was way at the one end, and there was a video scrolling with the pictures from my dad and mom and some of the boys. And I was standing there, and I heard a gentleman say, Mr. Shrader, and I turned around, and there was a guy that I'd heard a ton about, but I'd never met. His name is Tyrone Orr. My dad used to drink out of an Orr mortuary mug. I'd heard about Tyrone, but I'd never met him. He was there. He had a lady with him I thought was his wife. Tyrone is an African-American. Tyrone said, let me tell you something. There's not one guy in town that would touch my business. And I went to your dad, and I told him I don't have any collateral. And he said, well, let me talk about your character. Give me some character references. And your dad checked out my character, and he gave me a loan. And I have this business today and all that I have because of your dad. And then his wife wasn't his wife. It was his mother. She was 80 years old. She said, I want to tell you something about your dad. She said, a few years ago, I could not get anybody to come out and work on my furnace. It was winter, it was cold. I went over to the bank and I saw your dad. I said, Mr. Shrader, I can't get anybody to work on my furnace. And he said to me, you go home. She said, by the time I got home, there was a guy there to fix that furnace. It was a big deal to him. He had a special place in his heart for hurting people, for hardworking, honest people, and it really didn't matter to him if you were black or Indian or Latino. People matter. I got a great card from somebody here at the church. I got a ton of cards. Thank you so much for the cards and the letters and the emails and the flowers. I'd put your dad in that one-of-a-kind group. He was always coming to you, always asking about you. He was always a friend's friend. That's kind of how I saw it. Here's the next thing I learned. Values are caught, not necessarily taught. This is interesting to me. As you can see, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I got a lot going on for whatever my head's spinning in. And so I said to the boys, can you remember one piece of information that Dad gave you? And we sat down, and collectively, we could not come up with one moment where our dad gave us a bit of advice. Not one. I cannot think of one time where he sat me down and said, listen, son, that doesn't mean he didn't have influence on us. One author, reflecting on his own father, wrote these words. He didn't tell me how to live. He lived and let me watch him do it. That was my dad. He kind of said, just watch. Suck it all in. His fingerprints were all over us boys. We learned principles like you don't buy something unless you can pay for it. He never sat us down and said, let me take you through economics. He just showed it to you. I'll tell you something. I have friends who are a little bitter at their parents. Their parents are in that 70-plus range. And they're saying, my parents never told me that they love me. Let me tell you something. That generation didn't traffic in that kind of emotion or language. They didn't. My dad told me he loved me every day. He said, you can stay here and eat here. Okay? That's how he did it. I also have observed about that generation, they tend to be better grandparents than parents in terms of a lot of emotion and a lot of the things that we ascribe to parenthood. In Philippians chapter 4, Paul has a great phrase that he uses. He said, the things you've heard and the things you've seen and the things you've received from me, now go and do them. In other words, I like that values are caught, not taught. It'd be great if they were taught and caught. That'd be the ideal. And that's what Paul says in Philippians 4:9. These are the things I've taught you. These are the things you should catch. Now go and do them. How we live is important. Here you go. Here's the next thing I learned. You're leaving a legacy whether you realize it or not. The phrase that I wrote yesterday is, your life is not legacy neutral. There was something really interesting that happened to me. I am sitting there and my mom opened a country club bill. Now, when we were kids, you went to the country clubs. We were out there a lot. You'd just go up and you'd order a cheeseburger and fries and a Coke, and you'd just sign and put a number on it. And I'm sure over the years, they've had enough people call and say, I never got this stuff. So now everything is computerized. You get the time of the order, the server in the order, the exact items. So here was my dad's bill, and he would probably have that month been at the country club playing golf maybe 10 times, 11 times. Here it was like a picture of his life. Here was the date. Here were the cart fees. Here was, and every time it was the same. Soup and lemonade. Soup and lemonade. 10 times. 9 times. One time somebody must have bought the lemonade because it was only soup. And I thought, we're all cranking out the equivalent of that. Maybe not a printout, but everything you say, everything you do has an impact on somebody. You're creating a legacy. It could be good, it could be bad, positive, negative. We talk about it all the time. There's that moment coming when we're going to have that memorial service for you, and we're going to let people talk about you. What is it you want them to say? And do you want them to have to lie to make you sound like a relatively decent person even? And what is it you want them to say, and to figure that out and to begin to live life so that they don't have to lie at that moment and tell you the truth? A couple more things, 13 more minutes. I learned this. It's not new. Death is unavoidable. I had a lot of people say to me, "We were shocked at your father's death." And I know exactly what they mean, and I'm a kind, generous guy, and I understand what they mean. But technically, what we should be saying is, and we wouldn't say this, but we're not shocked by the fact he died. We're shocked by the timing of it. I can't imagine there's anybody going, "Oh my gosh, I thought Jim Shrader was going to live forever." We're not shocked by his dying. We're shocked by the circumstances. And so it becomes an important moment for us to just come to grips with that. I had a chance to speak at the memorial service. It was kind of interesting. The boys gathered together and they said, they've said we could speak if we want. Do we want to speak? And they said, well, let's let Tom do it. And I said, well, that's fine with me. I'm up for that task. And my other brother said, I want him to go last. I want Tom to go last and tie it all together. And one of the points I made at that memorial service is the reminiscing of my dad is wonderful. I love it. I love the stories. I did a little driving tour. I put the kids and Susan in the van, and I said, I want to take you around, and I want to show you my life. I want to show you every house I lived in. I want to show you where I played my first Little League game. Enthusiasm level was a little low at this point, just so you know, in the van. But the highlight of the trip is I took him down to Davenport Bank, to the building itself. And I cannot go in that building without crying. It is a wonderful building, built in 1929. It's this huge, it dominates, I can't believe I'm using these words together, the skyline of Davenport. It dominates the skyline. It is a wonderful structure. And that first floor of the bank lobby is probably 3 stories high, and just in paintings all around it is the story of the town of Davenport from like 1620 to Civil War. It is an unbelievable building. I love that building. I love the reminiscing. The highlight for me, one, was meeting Tyrone Orr and hearing about my dad, but to reminisce about him is one thing, but to miss the moment that God gives you to have an opportunity to reflect on your own mortality would be a tragedy. Death is unavoidable. As I was writing back, I was thinking about, I was going through O'Hare, and I was frustrated and tired, and I was sitting on the plane, and I was playing through this idea about saying goodbye. In this, and again, just indulge me, it's 10 minutes. In what I do, it seems like I regularly deal a lot with people who are dealing with death. And this idea of saying goodbye. And we have this theoretical discussion. Is it better to have someone die like my dad did, there it is and it's over, or is there this long period of time, and I think the just fall over tends to be better, but God does what's right, and whatever it should be, it is. One of the dark things or difficult things about someone just dropping over is that you don't have that opportunity to say goodbye. And then I realized something, sitting on this little dinky plane in the middle of nowhere. We did say goodbye, we just didn't realize it was goodbye. There is a last time you're going to speak. I don't want to get all maudlin here, and I don't want to get it to where you realize, okay, and stands up and said, I'm going to the store. And you go, oh, the store. I might never see you again. I'm not saying that, but here's what I'm saying. It's really helpful to keep those accounts clean. It's not like I may never see you again, but it's like if I don't, there's nothing left unsaid. I was not flying home going, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have said that. I said to him everything really I had to say. There might have been an intensity to it if I'd known that this was an end of this. Might have been a different moment if I got to a bedside, but the reality is I wasn't kicking myself going, oh gosh, I wish I would have. I kind of always assumed that the last time I saw him or the last time he left town could be the last. A couple more, and then I'll let you go. 3 more. Struggle is a vital part of life. When I think about my parents, and I think about those financial things, I think about bathing in the same water once a week and no toilet tissue and outside plumb. I think of all of those things. I think about not having anything. I think about getting a nickel for candy, and that was a huge deal if that ever happened. Struggle, I think, is good. I think there is something inherently good about earning something and striving for it. But also there's spiritual struggle. My brother found a note. It's almost like a diary that my dad had written. It's just a few lines. I thought a long time about it before I decided to share it with you. I am positive he never intended for this to be read out loud. I'm positive. It's just points. They're just like bullet points. He wrote this: I try to put God first in my life, but I know I fail. I tend to be nice to those I feel that are nice to me. When I feel injured, I try to get back at people. I tend to be envious and jealous of others. I can be irritable, sulking around the house, guilty of bad talk, foul language. I want things my way. I think of myself first. If I would have read those words at that visitation and said, "Who is this?" there's not a person in that room that would have said Jim Shrader. And it's not that he's schizophrenic. It's not that he's hypocritical. It was fun to stand in that line and be around and hear that concept, especially the people he worked with. They kept saying, he was so patient. He was so gentle. He was so patient. It got to the point where one of my brothers said, "Who are these people talking about? I didn't recognize any of them. They got to be in that room down there. You're the guy you once in that other room at the other end of the..." But what you see there is probably an accurate description of my dad. I'm sure he wouldn't have written those words if he didn't struggle with it, but that's the very struggle that all of us have. That is not unique. Do you not want to get even with somebody when they injure you? You want your own way, don't you? I love it when they go, "So-and-so is a controller." I haven't met anybody yet who isn't a controller. Everybody's a controller. Everybody wants their own way. Everybody thinks of themselves first. Paul said it this way: the things I want to do, I don't do. The things I don't want to do, I do. This is the struggle that we have. And it was so cool to find this note and to see that he struggled with that whole process. 2 more things. I learned through this that people listen. I got, as I said, a lot of cards. Let me just read you 2 of them. Over the years, I've tried to take certain phrases and understand you're more likely to remember a phrase maybe than a theological truth. And one of them is, what you know trumps what you feel. Not just in a moment like I went through, but in your life. One card said this: our prayers for you at this difficult time is that God will fill your heart with what you know. In quotes. Another card said, we sure understand your sorrow. Each of us have lost our dads. We know that all that you know will trump what you feel. I did not listen to television or radio for a week when I was home. I came back, I set the alarm, I woke up that first day back and the news came on, and it literally was, here's a serial killer and a rapist and war in Israel. It just went on and on and on and on and on. There is a time, there's a darkness. If you're watching television today and the talking heads are saying we're at World War III. Newt this morning was pretty powerful and strong. Newt was saying, look, it's not like a conventional war, but we got it going on in India and Afghanistan. We got it going on. We just stopped 5 guys or whatever it was in Canada that wanted to blow up the parliament. We got them here trying to blow. We got it all over. You read that for a while, and that starts to affect you, and it's really important as you're feeling things are getting out of control to remember what? God's in control. What I know trumps what I feel. And to know that you've heard that over the years, and in a moment like we had in our family, that you can write those words to me makes me smile. Here's the last thing. I said there's 2 questions I'm getting all the time. Number 1, how's your mom? Here's the other one. Do you think your dad's in heaven? And I wanted to be really cautious here. I wanted to make sure that I communicated clearly. So I wrote some things down. So let me read them to you. Okay? My dad was a reliable friend, a solid worker, a caring man, an active church member, a faithful husband, a proud father, and a loving grandpa. And none of those determine whether he goes to heaven or not. Now that's him. He was all of those things. He was a reliable friend and a solid worker, 42 years without a complaint, I guarantee you. And a caring man, and active in his church, and a faithful husband, and a proud father, and a loving grandfather. But none of those things determine whether a person is in heaven. The Bible teaches us that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. If you listen to my father's note as I read it to you, that's the human condition. All of us, universally, every person without exception, no one in here is the exception, has sin. And the wage of sin, Paul says in Romans 6:23, the wage of sin is death. Death means separation. It's not just physical death, it's spiritual death. Sin separates us from God. Romans 6:23, the wage of sin is death, but, big word, but the free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. Jesus says it this way in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. For God so loved the world, John 3:16, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish. Obviously not physically, right? We're all going to perish physically. But spiritually, I will not perish spiritually. I will have eternal life. From a theological or doctrinal perspective, Paul says it this way. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, 9, and 10. For by grace you've been saved through faith. That is not of yourself. It's a gift of God. It's not a result of works, so you won't boast. This morning, I got started pretty early. I was probably in here, 5:30-ish, and did all my stuff and what I need to do, and I'm working around campus. It seems like it's been a busy day. I've had a lot of people who have said to me, I'm struggling with this, or can you talk to me about this, or I have a question about this. I went over at 8:30 and started the service. Jim was meeting with some home group leaders at 8:30, so I went in to talk to them about home groups and the importance of what they were doing and how this is really critical in all that we're doing. And so I watch. You're never going to do this, but it is an absolutely fascinating thing to watch this campus come to life on a Sunday morning. It really is an interesting thing. Like I said, I get here somewhere between 5 and 6 every week, sometimes a little bit earlier. And you'll see these tents are set up out here, and then you'll see the next time people starting to come and populate it, and here they are, and you've got people working all over, and here you are at the end of a really hot day, and yet you're here. The takeaway value of this is important for you. You can be a reliable friend and a solid worker and a caring person and all involved at church and doing all the Bible studies and leading a small group and be a faithful spouse if you're married or a celibate single if you're single and a proud parent and a loving grandparent. But if you don't know Christ, heaven is not in your future. That is really an important truth. And death crystallizes all of that. So the answer to the question about my dad is the same answer to the question about you or me. You are not going to be in heaven because you think you're a good person, because I'm going to help you with this. You aren't. That's God's judgment of you. There was no one good, no, not one. Romans chapter 3. All of us have sinned. All of us have fallen short of the glory of God. And there's no way that you or I can earn salvation or work our way there. As I said to the people at that funeral service, I want to make that same point to you, and then I'll let you go. A moment like this, death, especially if it's somebody you know or a family member, but really anybody's death, hopefully just a little bit of story of my dad brings him alive to you enough that you can sense all of this. Death is always one of those moments where you have, I think by God's grace, this great opportunity to think about life. If necessary, to reevaluate. If absolutely necessary, to redefine, redirect, recommit a life. So I think my dad's destiny, I can't figure those things out. I remember I've had obviously a lot of conversations with him, and I remember one day, and this was years ago, we're walking along, and I'm explaining salvation to him, and he said to me, "You mean if I was a believer and I killed somebody, I'd still go to heaven?" And I smiled because it meant that he really got this grace thing going. Grace was clicking. The tumblers were coming together. And so I can't look at his heart any more than I can look at your heart. I can tell you this. His destination is not determined by whether he was a reliable friend or a solid worker or a caring man or active in church, or whether he was a faithful husband or proud dad or loving grandpa. His destination is determined by whether he knows Christ in a personal way, just like yours. So it's a great moment to rethink this. Now, the irony of all of this is that is a wonderful introduction to next week's study. It really is a great, as you look at James chapter 2, verse 14 to 26, James is asking the question, what good is your faith if you don't have works? So how do these things come together? How does faith and works play in our life? Do works not matter? If we're going to sit here and say, I'm saved by grace through faith, do we throw out works and say, well, it doesn't matter how you live? Well, you know that's not true. We'll pick that up next week. I really do pray that God would use this moment. First of all, I thank you for indulging me, but I hope God does use this moment to cause us to pause and reflect on our own life, to rethink if necessary, redefine, redirect, recommit. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for all that you give us. I thank you for 56 years with my dad. I thank you for his faithful provision for us. There were times when I know he went without so we would have. When I see a bumper sticker that says, pursue delayed gratification, I think of him. And thank you for his modeling to me of life. Thank you that he taught me that people really do matter. It doesn't matter what color their skin is or an economic background, but that they're people. Thank you for all the lessons that were taught. God, thank you for an opportunity to be reminded that death is unavoidable. Death is part of life. And really that ultimate truth that I'm really not ready to live until I'm ready to die. God, remind us that every time we say goodbye to somebody, it could be the last time we see them. Let us keep short accounts. God, put in us a gentle spirit, firm in the truth. God, help us see that all of us want our own way. All of us have a bone that is envious. God, all of us are sinners. Some of us know Christ, and God, we still struggle. We aren't perfect. I pray for those that are here. God, I've met so many people who were here today as kind of the first time, or the first time in a long time. There's a reason for that. God, I thank you that we're here, and I pray that you use this time, this message, and this moment. You use it to touch our hearts and opens our eyes, see the truth of it. We pray to you here tonight. In Christ's name, amen. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.